Japanese restaurants are not better cooks than you. They just know 29 things you do not. And by number one, that $18 bowl costs you 70 cents. Let's get into it. Number 29, wash your rice. Fast and get it out of the water. Every American cooking blog says rinse until the water runs clear. And if you are at the sink for 5 minutes, you are making it worse. Swirl the rice 3 times and pour the water off within 30 seconds. Repeat twice, then stop. Dry rice absorbs water fastest in the first seconds it gets wet, so a slow rinse pumps that cloudy starch straight into the center of every grain. This is how Japanese restaurants serve rice where the grains cling but still stand apart, instead of one soft mass in the bottom of the bowl. Number 28, soak the rice. 30 minutes before you turn the cooker on, rice cooked from dry hides a chalky, undercooked core in every grain, which is why home rice tastes faintly raw and goes hard an hour later. After rinsing, let it sit in its cooking water for 30 minutes, closer to an hour in winter, then cook as normal. Water needs time to reach the center, and starch only gelatinizes where water has actually arrived. Soak first, and the whole grain transforms at once. Japanese households treat this as part of cooking rice, not an optional extra, and it costs you nothing but planning. Number 27, rest the rice 10 minutes, then cut it and fluff it with the paddle. When the cooker beeps, the bottom grains are waterlogged, the top ones are drier, and trapped steam is condensing back down and turning the surface gluey. Leave the lid shut for 10 minutes, then slice down through the rice in a cross and lift and turn it gently. Never stir, because crushed grains release starch and go pasty. Restaurants treat this as non-negotiable, and so did my grandma Yuki, whose kitchen smelled like the inside of that pot at 6 in the morning, which I did not appreciate at the time. Number 26, salt your cucumbers and squeeze them before they meet a dressing. Sliced cucumber sitting in sesame dressing looks good for 4 minutes and then floods, leaving pale water at the bottom and no flavor anywhere. Toss the slices with half a teaspoon of salt, wait 10 minutes, then squeeze the water out firmly in your hands. Salt on the surface creates a concentration gradient, and osmosis pulls water out of the vegetable cells to meet it. Less water inside means the dressing stays a dressing, and while we are on preparation, this sets up the velveting we get to at number 9. Number 25, freeze your meat for exactly 15 minutes before slicing. Cutting fully thawed chicken or pork into thin, even strips is a nightmare because the knife squashes soft tissue instead of cutting it. Lay the piece flat, freeze 15 minutes until the outside is firm and the center still gives, then slice. Partial freezing forms ice crystals that stiffen the muscle structure, so the blade shears cleanly instead of pushing the meat around ahead of it. Even slices then cook in the same number of seconds as each other. This is how Japanese kitchens produce paper-thin shabu-shabu slices without a $2,000 machine. Number 24, stop cutting straight down and start cutting on a long diagonal. Carrots and asparagus cut into neat coins take forever to cook and hold no sauce at all. Hold the knife at about 30 degrees to the vegetable slice and roll the piece a quarter turn between cuts. The diagonal exposes far more surface area per piece, so heat reaches the center before the outside collapses, and there is more surface for a glaze to grab. This single cut is why restaurant vegetables look deliberate and taste seasoned all the way through instead of dressed on the outside. Number 23, score eggplant and squid before they hit the heat. Whole-skinned eggplant takes on almost no flavor, and squid curls into rubber bands the moment it gets hot. Cut a shallow crosshatch into the skin side, 1/8 of an inch deep, spacing the lines a 1/4 inch apart. On eggplant, it breaks the waxy cuticle, blocking oil and seasoning from getting in. On squid, it severs the collagen sheets that all run one direction and contract violently in heat, which is exactly what makes it curl. Japanese cooks call these hidden knife cuts because they vanish once cooked while doing all the structural work. Number 22, add sugar before salt, and if that sounds backwards, that is the point. Most home cooks salt first out of habit, then wonder why the dish tastes sharp outside and bland in the middle. Japanese cooking follows a fixed order: sugar, then salt, then vinegar, then soy sauce, then miso. Sucrose is a much larger molecule than salt and diffuses far more slowly, so it needs the head start. Worse, salt going in first pulls water from the surface and tightens the proteins, closing the door so the sugar never gets in. Sequence, not quantity, is what makes simmered dishes taste layered. Number 21. Drop cut lotus root, burdock, and potato into cold water with a splash of rice vinegar. Left on the board, those pale surfaces turn dull gray-brown within minutes, and cooking never brings the color back. Use 1 teaspoon of vinegar per 2 cups of water, and let the pieces sit 5 to 10 minutes. An enzyme called polyphenol oxidase meets oxygen at the cut surface and starts browning, and that enzyme works poorly in acid. Lowering the pH slows it to a crawl while the water keeps oxygen out. This is why restaurant kinpira gobo is pale gold instead of muddy. Number 20. Boil green vegetables in aggressively salted water, then dump them into ice. Home spinach and broccoli come out the color of army surplus because they sat in hot water long past the point where anything good was happening. Use 1 tablespoon of salt per quart, boil hard, cook 60 to 90 seconds, then plunge into ice water. Violent heat drives the air pockets out of the tissue, which is why the green suddenly looks brilliant, and it destroys the enzyme that degrades chlorophyll. The ice stops the vegetable's own acids from turning that green into dull olive. Hold that idea about temperature shock because it returns at number 11. Number 19. Marinate your protein in shio koji. Salt seasons the outside of a chicken thigh and does nothing for texture, which is why home chicken can be well seasoned and still stringy. Coat a pound of chicken, pork, or fish in 2 tablespoons of shio koji, refrigerate a few hours, then wipe most of it off because it burns. Koji mold produces protease enzymes that cut proteins into free amino acids, tenderizing the meat and flooding it with glutamate at the same time. My grandma, Yuki, kept a jar of this on the fridge door and used it on everything, including things I would not recommend. She kept a second jar, and that one is number 1. Number 18. Use a drop lid when you simmer. A pot of vegetables in a thin layer of broth cooks the bottom half properly and leaves the top half naked, and adding enough liquid to cover everything dilutes your seasoning to nothing. Cut a circle of parchment slightly smaller than the pot, poke a hole in the center, and lay it right on the food. Simmering liquid rises, hits the paper, and is sent back down over everything, so half the broth seasons all of it. It also cuts evaporation so the sauce never concentrates into a salt bomb. Japanese kitchens have used wooden versions for centuries. Number 17. Let simmered dishes cool in their own liquid before serving. Freshly simmered daikon tastes seasoned on the surface and watery inside, which is why these dishes are famously better the next day and nobody explains why. Simmer until just tender, turn off the heat, and let the pot sit on the counter an hour before reheating gently. As the food cools, the vapor inside condenses and the contents contract, creating a pressure difference that draws the seasoned broth inward. Cooking pushes flavor out, cooling pulls it in. This is why restaurant Nemono tastes complete all the way through, and it requires you to do nothing. Number 16. Rinse cooked noodles in cold water and rub them with your hands. Home udon and soba come out slick and slightly slimy, then clump into one sad brick in the bowl. Drain them, run cold water over them, and rub the strands between your palms for 20 seconds until they squeak. The rubbing strips the loose starch gel off every strand, and the cold shock makes the gelatinized starch inside retrograde, meaning the molecules realign and firm up. That is where the springy, distinct bite comes from. For hot soup, dunk them back in boiling water for 5 seconds and the texture still holds. Number 15. Toast your sesame seeds and crush half of them. Seeds straight from the jar are decoration, which is why your spinach side dish tastes like plain spinach. Put them in a dry skillet over medium heat for 2 to 3 minutes, shaking constantly until they smell nutty and start to pop, then grind half in a mortar. Heat drives Maillard browning inside the seed, building aromatic compounds that were not there before, and crushing ruptures the cell walls so the oils carrying them can escape. Untoasted and whole, the flavor stays locked in a hull that passes straight through you. This is most of what makes restaurant goma-e taste that way. Number 14. Keep the heat low and steady for savory steamed egg custard. Home chawanmushi comes out full of holes, weeping water into the bottom of the cup with the texture of a wet sponge. Strain the egg and dashi mixture, cover the cups with foil, and steam over the gentlest simmer for 12 to 15 minutes with the lid cracked. Egg proteins set into a delicate network between about 150 and 180 degrees. And pushed hotter, that network keeps contracting, squeezing out the water it was holding and tearing into bubbles. Low heat sets the structure and stops. That is a temperature problem, not a recipe problem. Number 13, salt your fish 30 minutes ahead and then pat it bone dry. Fish, straight from the package, steams in its own moisture, sticks to the pan, and tastes faintly of the sea in the bad way. Salt both sides lightly, rest it on a rack 20 to 30 minutes, then blot every drop away. Osmosis pulls moisture to the surface along with trimethylamine, the compound behind fishy odor, and you wipe both off while the dissolved salt gets reabsorbed and firms the flesh. A dry surface can then climb past the boiling point and actually brown. Every grilled fish you have admired started here. Number 12. Pour boiling water over meat and bones before making soup. Home broth turns out cloudy and gray with a scummy raft on top, and skimming for 20 minutes never fixes the flavor. Put the meat or bones in a colander in the sink, pour boiling water over every surface, then rinse under cold water and rub off anything clinging on. The boiling water instantly coagulates loose surface proteins and residual blood into solids you can wash away instead of impurities that disperse through your stock. Start clean and it stays clear with no babysitting. This is the first step of nearly every clear soup you have paid for. Number 3 is coming. Number 11, make tempura batter ice cold. Mix it with chopsticks and leave the lumps. Home tempura goes soft and bready within a minute of leaving the oil, which is the most disappointing thing a kitchen can do to you. Use ice water, add the flour at the last second, stir about 10 strokes, and stop while dry patches are still visible. Gluten forms when wheat proteins are hydrated and agitated, and both slow dramatically in the cold. Undermixed and freezing, the batter never builds that elastic network, so you get a brittle lattice that shatters instead of a chewy coating. Restaurants keep the bowl sitting in ice the whole service. Number 10, fry twice, once low and once high. A single long fry gives you courage that is either pale and greasy or dark and dry, with no version where both go right. Fry at 325 degrees for 3 to 4 minutes, rest the pieces 5 minutes, then fry again at 375 degrees for about 1 minute until deep gold. During the rest, moisture migrates out of the interior into the crust, and the fierce second fry flashes it off. A crust with less water in it absorbs less oil and stays crisp far longer. This is why restaurant fried chicken still crunches by the time it reaches your table. Number 9, velvet your meat with a pinch of baking soda. This is the texture gap you have never been able to close, no matter how good your pan is. Toss a pound of thinly sliced chicken or beef with a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, wait 20 minutes, rinse well, pat dry, then add a tablespoon each of cornstarch and oil. Baking soda raises the surface pH, and at higher pH, the proteins carry a stronger negative charge and repel each other instead of bonding tightly and squeezing out water as they cook. This is how Japanese and Chinese restaurants get that soft, almost velvety texture home stir-fry never has. Number 8, get the pan. Screaming hot and cook in batches. Everyone knows to use a hot pan and almost nobody actually waits, which is why home stir-fry comes out gray and wet. Heat a heavy skillet over high heat for 2 full minutes, add oil, wait until it shimmers and moves like water, then add food in a single layer with space between the pieces. Browning is the Maillard reaction, and it needs a dry surface above roughly 300 degrees. Crowd the pan and released moisture pins the surface at 212, so everything boils in its own juices. 2 batches cost 4 minutes and produce a different dish entirely. Number 7, add a splash of sake early. Chicken and especially fish carry a muddy background note at home that no amount of soy sauce covers up. Add 1 to 2 tablespoons of sake to the pan or the marinade and let it cook off. Ethanol is highly volatile, and as it evaporates, it carries other volatile compounds away with it, including the amines behind fishy and gamey odors. What stays behind is what sake is full of, amino acids and sugars that add savory depth and help the surface brown. Restaurants do not use sake because it is traditional. They use it because it removes something and leaves something. Number 6, cook mirin and soy sauce down into a glaze instead of pouring them on. Home teriyaki is a thin brown liquid that runs off the chicken and pools on the plate, tasting mostly of salt. Combine equal parts soy sauce, mirin, and sake with a teaspoon of sugar. Simmer 3 to 5 minutes until it coats the back of a spoon, then turn the cooked protein in it. Driving off water concentrates the sugars, and concentrated sugar syrup is dramatically more viscous, so it clings, while the heat caramelizes those sugars into deep mahogany color and bittersweet depth. That shine on restaurant eel is a reduction, not an ingredient. Number 5. Use panko and rest breaded cutlets 10 minutes before frying. Regular breadcrumbs give a dense, oily coating, and half of it falls into the oil and burns. Bread with flour, then egg, then panko, and set the cutlet on a rack for 10 minutes before it goes in. Panko is made from crustless bread baked without browning, producing large, jagged, low-density flakes with far less surface touching the oil, so they absorb noticeably less of it. The rest matters just as much, giving the flour time to hydrate into glue that binds the coating on. This is why restaurant tonkatsu survives a knife. Number 4. Add toasted sesame oil and fresh aromatics after the heat is off. Sesame oil poured into a hot pan smells incredible for 20 seconds and then tastes like nothing. Finish the dish, kill the heat, and stir in a teaspoon of toasted sesame oil with sliced scallion, shiso, or grated ginger. Aroma compounds are volatile by definition, meaning they leave as vapor at high temperature. So anything added to a hot pan goes into your extractor fan instead of your mouth. Off the heat, the oil stays intact and carries those fat-soluble compounds across your palate. Same ingredients, completely different dish, purely a matter of timing. Number 3. Add a pinch of MSG, and if you have been avoiding it over concerns debunked decades ago, you are voluntarily making your food taste worse. A quarter teaspoon in a soup, a stir-fry, or a dressing does more for depth than anything else in your cabinet. MSG is monosodium glutamate, and glutamate is the exact molecule that makes Parmesan, ripe tomatoes, mushrooms, and kombu taste savory. Your tongue has a receptor for it, and that receptor cannot tell whether the glutamate arrived attached to a tomato or on its own. Japanese restaurants keep a canister within arm's reach, and this is very often the whole gap. Number 2, smash your garlic and ginger and then leave them alone for 10 minutes. Garlic dropped into hot oil straight off the board tastes mild and faintly disappointing, and people assume they bought weak garlic. Crush the cloves flat with your knife, chop them, and let them sit for 10 minutes before cooking. Garlic does not actually contain its signature compound. It contains allicin plus a separate enzyme, and only when the cells rupture do the two meet and start producing allicin, the pungent compound you want. Heat destroys that enzyme instantly, so garlic that hits the pan first never finishes the reaction. 10 minutes of nothing doubles the flavor. And here we are at number 1, the one that explains that $18 bowl. Make real dashi and never let the kombu boil. Put 1 4-inch square of kombu in 4 cups of cold water, heat it slowly, and pull it out right before it simmers, around 175 degrees. Add a big handful of katsuobushi, turn the heat off completely, wait 2 minutes, and strain. Kombu delivers glutamate, and katsuobushi delivers inosinate. Together, those two molecules multiply perceived umami many times over, rather than simply adding up. Boiling the kombu instead extracts slimy alginates and bitterness. Easier still, leave both in a jar of cold water in the fridge overnight and strain it in the morning. My grandma Yuki kept that jar on the second shelf and lifted the pot off at a moment I could never predict. She never told me why, she just moved my hand. There you have it, 29 tricks restaurants would rather you never connected. Do not try all of them this week. Start with 3 or 4. Rest your rice, 10 minutes, velvet your chicken with baking soda, smash your garlic, and walk away, and put a kombu jar in the fridge tonight. Your Japanese cooking will improve immediately, and it will not be subtle. A few of these came from my grandma Yuki, who never explained a single one of them, and who would be quietly pleased they are in your kitchen now. Drop a comment and tell us the one thing your grandmother did in the kitchen that you never understood until later. And subscribe if you want more deep dives like this, because we have a lot more coming, and we will see you in the next video.